the next 15 minutes, what I'd like to take you through is a little bit about my career, what's been good and what's not, some tips to help you not make the same mistakes that I did, hopefully get you a bit of time, and then finally a little bit of a forecast on what I think's coming in data-driven marketing in the next 3 to 5 years. So as Scarlett was saying, we've been working in a period of cultural change in this industry. Oops, sorry, this is not very good. Okay, so let's just have a look at, this has been my career. So I've been working for almost 30 years in data-driven marketing, which is quite a long time. It feels like a long time anyway. I started off with an arts degree. So I got an arts degree in philosophy and English and my master's in logic. So again, like Scarlett, data science didn't really exist when I was 18. I started off working at agencies, and then I moved to the client side and did some client assignments. In the meantime, I set up 2 businesses. I call them entrepreneurial episodes because sadly they didn't make my fortune, which is why I'm here and not in, the south of France. And then I've just ended up working at the National Trust, where I did quite a major assignment for the National Trust. Everything that I've been working on has been centered around analytics and what we now call data science. But it's been to do with how it's used rather than just analytics per se, and particularly how it's used in a marketing environment. That's been my career side, and then on the other side I've put my personal life. I've got one husband, which I've had, which I think is a success rather than a failure. And I've had 4 kids, all of which have left home now. Moved house 6 times, and recently I've had quite a major personal crisis. One of my children was in a car crash in 2012, and that entailed me kind of dropping my career as such, and looking after him for a year and a half, and then getting back to my career. So, yeah, there we go. Okay, so what is data science and marketing? And this is my own definition. I didn't wiki it. I made this up. Using behavioral data to understand customers, and then using the insights from that to give them a relevant experience. In other words, it's treating people as individuals. So it's kind of lighting up those consumers, those shady consumers, and getting to know them as individuals. And this is very interesting because it's only really in the last kind of 5 years that this has been technically possible. But I did try to do it before, believe it or not, before the internet was invented. We tried to do it. And I see this as a kind of win-win in marketing, because I think it's the only kind of marketing people actually like. If it's done right, people like it because it is relevant to them. And everybody likes something that's relevant, right? And it's also about using it to earn loyalty. And again, loyalty is a kind of marketing that people like. It's not a kind of wham-bam quick buck, but it's actually about having a relationship with brands and companies that you actually care about. So people like John Lewis have obviously used this to enormous commercial success. So pretty much every month now there's a new, great social app or something. If there's Periscope now, data's just being generated at one hell of a rate. And people are interacting personally with that, which means there's personal data to be harvested and analysed. The second really key trend is personalisation, as I've spoken about. You guys will all take that absolutely for granted, that when you log on, you get a personalised experience that's tailored for you somehow. What's going to be happening in the next couple of years is when you walk into something physical. So, for example, what I've been working on, a National Trust property, or it could be a store or a branch of your pub, is you will start to notice a personalised experience delivered, you know, in physical places as well. It's happening with the news. As you know, you can all sort out your BBC news feed to be relevant to you through your choices. So all this is added up to McKinsey predicting that there's going to be a shortage of about 1.5 million people worldwide over the next 3 years that will, people that have analytical know-how, that actually know how to make sense of all this data. And everybody in this room is one of those. Okay, so what's good about a career in data-driven marketing? Well, it's in a growing sector, so you can stop and start and switch with ease. So as I've done when I've had a couple of career breaks, and when that accident happened to my son, I was just able to drop things and then pick up the phone, and within a few weeks, I've found something. So that's a great confidence to get. Nobody has to be trapped in a rubbish job. Nobody in this room has to be trapped in a job they don't like. Change, it's easy. There's kind of three, could you go on to the next one? Yeah, there's kind of 3 different areas for data-driven marketing. So firstly, we have the client side, and that's the companies like News UK, British Gas, the AA, companies that are rich in consumer data, which is kind of most of them, really. In the middle column there, we've got agencies and consultancies. Now, there's a lot of really good agencies out there, like Ogilvy, Digitas, LBI, and so on. But a relatively recent trend is the big management consultancies are trying to get into this space too now. So they've moved from a fairly technical delivery kind of, bring in the Capgemini boys to install a system. They've moved from that now into consulting about what do you do with the data, how do you harvest it, how do you mine it, how do you prepare it for analytics. They're recruiting like mad at the moment. And then the last column is the one I kind of know least about because I've not personally worked in this area, which is the marketing technology products. But in a way, I think it's possibly the more interesting one that's going to come out. And there's some of the old stalwarts like Experian, that have been there forever. But this part of our business, it's kind of startup driven, which is really interesting. So even the big companies like Adobe, they're growing through acquiring startups or kind of 2-3-year-old products. So Adobe recently acquired Neolane, which is a campaign engine. And this is what's happening. And there's a huge amount of change in this area. And my tip is it'd be very, very good to get into development of some of these products in a startup. You'll get bought out in a few years, and you will be in the house in France long before I will. So the pros and cons of each of these, on the client side, the pro is, as Scarlett said, is really owning the strategy and delivering it, which feels great. The con is you can go a little bit stale. If you're in a job for 3-4 years, you're very focused on producing the strategy for that company. And I think it's really important to stay current because things are moving so fast. So you've got to watch that if you go client side. In contrast, the agency, working for an agency, is you stay current. You've got to. That's what people are buying you for. And you work in a variety of sectors, depending on where your clients are. And that's really nice and stimulating as well. The cons is they're pretty ruthless working in agencies, and you often don't last long. If your client goes, or if your client says perhaps they don't get along with you, it's a bit like that. And the product side, I think the pros would be you'd be on the cutting edge of working with technology. But the con is you're quite low down the food chain. If you work for a product side, you're not really going to impact on a client organization strategy so much. It's more like they decide what they want to do, then see if your product is right for it. But very, very interesting landscape. As well as that flexibility, in data-driven marketing, there's loads of variety. So we can go all the way around from the kind of things you might expect, like insight and analytics in the MI and BI area. There's modeling. Some of the more interesting things are perhaps the new product development and the software development. So you can go right from coding to really doing, quite creative stuff there. The area that I've been mostly working in the last few years has been campaign and communications, really. And I'm really interested in how you can take data and turn it into communication very, very quickly via data science. So again, there's plenty of variety there. You'll soon be able to find what you like doing, or do like I've done, and kind of try and move around and collect the full set. Okay, so that's what's all the good stuff. Now, what's not so good? Leadership in this area. It's not that great. There aren't really very many good roles, really top roles there. The C-suite, as we call it, for the Chief Information Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and so on. I think News UK is one of the very few, if not the only one, that has essentially an analytic role on the board. Mostly analysis reports into the marketing director or the IT director, neither of which are exactly right for it. I, along with others in this room, would argue for a new director position to be created, which is what we're talking about. The organizational operating models, because of what I've just said, and because of data science sitting somewhere between technology and marketing, or at least the kind of data science I'm talking about here, most of the marketing directors are from a brand building discipline. So typically, marketing directors at about my age and my experience have come up through FMCG. Maybe they've been, brand manager at Dove and Procter & Gamble and that kind of thing. Completely different kind of marketing. And this CIOs, so IT directors, often come from a security background or something like that. Again, not really very relevant. And this can make quite an odd way to work. I think, rather ironically, I think the communication skills have to be better to be able to function in these environments. The third bullet point I've put on this slide is something that isn't the fault of others. I think it's the fault of ourselves. And that's that quite a lot of analysts, I think by nature, they look deep and narrow at something. I mean, that's the job, right? You're trying to find out. You're mining deep into something. The problem with that is if you don't get your head up or take a step back or whatever and try and look at what's going on around and to appreciate the bigger picture, you can get sidelined as kind of really good analysts. Okay, let's keep them in a corner and tell them what to look at. And that is what I see happen time and time and time again. So I'll just speak about that in a few minutes, a little bit more. Okay, so what's coming next? Let's just try and look a little bit into the future. I'm not Mystic Meg, but I don't think anybody would disagree. There's about 10 main trends going on here, and because of time, I've just picked 3. I think a phrase that you'll probably hear quite a lot in the marketing context is that data is the new creative. And basically what that means is, in the past, the magic, the pixie dust of advertising was creatives, as in copywriters and art directors who came up with strap lines and designed commercials and posters. What data is the new creative means is it's going to be you guys. It's going to be the analysts that are providing that pixie dust. And the first evidence of that is in a trend that we're calling hyper-personalization, which is when a consumer gets a personalized experience wherever they go. And I touched on this earlier, multiple channels. And by channels, I don't mean email or mail. I mean wherever you walk. You know, if you're walking down the street, if you're walking into a store, if you're going to the gym, people will very quickly expect a personalized experience. They are already. The second thing I've got on the slide is the Internet of Things, and I think my particular interest is the connected home. Now, I think what's going to happen here is the data that's collected through people's use of objects and products is going to very quickly blur a lot of lines. So I think what's going to happen is the lines between marketing and customer service are going to become very, very, very blurred. And then between customer service and engineering as well. So new product development. So now a company like Dyson, say, what they do is they research their products. So if you've bought a certain product, you take a sample. They have focus groups that ask people, how did you use it, how many times a day, how did you find it and all that. Then that data is analysed and a report's made, and then the marketing director looks at it, the engineers look at it, and so on. All that is going to happen in real time with the Internet of Things, which I think is a really interesting area to keep your eye on. And then thirdly is a more customer-focused trend, which is in data transparency. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but there's a lot of data privacy legislation discussions that keep rumbling around Brussels, and then we've had the safe harbour discussions where European data can't be processed in America now, so Microsoft's investing in data centres in Germany. All of this is happening. I think where it's going to lead to is that customers are going to have to get the right to look at their own data over the internet, basically. So at the moment, the law is that a customer can see upon request what data a company holds on them, but it's made incredibly difficult. You've got to find it, you've got to get the address, you've got to give the company 6 weeks, you've got to pay the administrative costs and all that. So that's one trend. And then the other trend is the self-serve areas digitally that are being created. So pretty much everywhere you go now online, you can see in the top right of the screen, my top shop or whatever it is. Now those self-serve areas, coupled with the right to see what data companies have on you, I think they'll come together and will just give customers a window into our single customer views. The interesting question is do you give customers the right to edit their own information and to essentially override their usage, which is interesting. So the disparity between how people use it and how they want you to see them is quite an interesting field. So that's 3 trends. So finally, I'd just like to round off with some kind of learn the hard way tips. Data science is about communication as much as maths, and this is just number 1 learning. And this is why products like Tableau are doing so well, because they're not really analytic tools, they're communication tools. They just visualize data so people can understand it. It's really, really important for you to remember that in real commercial life, communication is the most important thing. And just to take that a little bit further, is when you're communicating insights, focus on 1 or 2 that make a difference, sell them and land them, rather than presenting your boss or your team leader or whatever with a whole kind of smorgasbord of insights. And that way you'll build a reputation. You'll be the person that made such and such happen. rather than just, oh, there's that really good analyst, they've always got loads of stuff to say. That's important. Showing your personality is something that I think is important, because I think, again, analysts, because of the nature of your work, you can be treated a bit like a machine. Just process this, you know. I mean, everybody can, but I think working with data lends itself to that kind of treatment. So show your personality and you'll benefit from it. Never forget the customer. This is something that's important. Never forget that what data in marketing is about knowing people. It's not about data. It's not about numbers. And then lastly, get known for something. So try early in your career to be able to say that you were part of the team that did such and such. I think that's really important. So basically, I managed to do that through being a director at dunnhumby during the period of their real growth. And I've always been able to say that. It's been good, because that's kind of one of the things that I'm known for. So finally, what I'll leave you with is the two most important things I think I can tell you, after all my experience and mistakes, is to stay curious. This is both what makes you attractive to other people, but it's also what keeps you going yourself, your natural curiosity. And secondly, respect the customers of whatever company you're working with, because that respect will come out in your work, and it in turn will win your respect from within that organisation. So that's it. Thank you very much.